gunfire at this scene. More than 50 shots were fired based on the number of evidence markers that we're seeing here on the ground. And we are told that there was a baby in the backseat of the victim's vehicle who fortunately was not hurt.
At 1:25 in the afternoon, on a busy street in Chicago, a young mother sat inside a white sedan. Her baby girl was in the back seat. She had no warning, no chance to run, no place to hide. Within seconds, 3 people dressed in black ran toward the car and opened fire. More than 50 shots, in broad daylight, with a child inside. 26-year-old Gabryel Ayres was rushed to the hospital, fighting for her life. Hours later, she was gone. Today's story is not just about how Gabryel died. It's about who she was, the life she lived, the child she loved, and the unanswered questions that still hang over her case. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. These stories matter, and so does remembering the people behind the headlines. Gabryel Ayres, often called Gabby by those close to her, was 26 years old at the time of her death. She was a daughter, a friend, and most importantly, a mother. People who knew Gabryel described her as deeply devoted to her child. Her world, according to family members, revolved around her baby girl. Everything she did was shaped by the responsibility and love she felt as a parent. She lived in Chicago and was connected to the South Side community, an area marked by strong family ties, faith institutions, and also long-standing struggles with violence. Despite those challenges, Gabryel's loved ones say she tried to build a stable life for herself and her child. There is no public record showing that Gabryel was involved in criminal activity. Nothing in police statements or family interviews suggests she was a target because of something she had done. That absence of explanation is one of the most painful parts of this case. Gabryel was the mother of an infant daughter, less than 1 year old at the time of the shooting. Family members have repeatedly emphasized that Gabryel was protective, loving, and attentive. Her godfather, Pastor Kirk Bell, spoke emotionally about her dedication, saying her love as a parent was fierce and unconditional. On the day she was shot, Gabryel's baby was strapped into the back seat of the car. The child survived without physical injury. For many people, that fact is both a relief and a heartbreak. A miracle for the baby, a devastating reminder of what the child lost. After Gabryel's death, her baby was taken into the care of Gabryel's mother, ensuring she would remain surrounded by family. Gabryel was not alone in the car that day. A 27-year-old man was seated in the vehicle with her. Police have not publicly described the exact nature of their relationship, and authorities have not stated that he was the intended target either. He survived the attack, suffering gunshot wounds to his arm and lower body, and was later listed in stable condition. What is clear is that Gabryel was surrounded by people who loved her. Her godfather, Pastor Kirk Bell, became one of the strongest voices speaking on her behalf. His grief quickly turned into anger and calls for change. He publicly demanded action from city leadership, questioning how such violence could happen in the middle of the day, on a public street, with a baby present. Faith leaders, family members, and elected officials would later stand at the very intersection where Gabryel was killed, honoring her life and demanding justice. On Wednesday afternoon, around 1:25 p.m., Gabryel Ayres was riding in a white Chevy sedan in the Auburn Gresham area of Chicago, near the 7900 block of South May Street. It was not late at night. It was not a quiet street. It was the middle of the day. According to police, at least 3 attackers wearing black clothing ran up to the vehicle. They were armed with automatic weapons. Witness video shows the attackers firing repeatedly at the car. The sound of gunfire fills the air as people nearby scramble to understand what is happening. At some point during the attack, the white sedan crashed into a brown GMC van. The driver of that van later declined medical treatment. The attackers briefly ran back to their red getaway vehicle. Then, incredibly, they stopped again and fired several more rounds into the white car before speeding away. When the shooting ended, more than 50 shell casings were found at the scene. Emergency responders arrived quickly. Gabryel had been shot multiple times and was rushed to Little Company of Mary Hospital in critical condition. Doctors fought to save her, but despite their efforts, she later died from her injuries. The 27-year-old man in the car was transported to Christ Hospital. He survived and was later listed in good condition. Police officers searching the vehicle made a discovery that stunned even seasoned responders. Gabryel's baby was still in the back seat, alive and physically unharmed. Windows were shattered. Airbags had deployed. Bullet holes were visible across the car. Yet the child had survived. News of Gabryel's death spread quickly. Tributes poured in, describing her as a loving mother whose life was taken in a moment of senseless violence. One tribute described the baby's survival as both a miracle and a painful reminder of Gabryel's final moments as a parent trying to protect her child. Pastor Kirk Bell spoke openly about his anger, saying there was no justification for opening fire on a car when a baby was clearly inside. Faith leaders from St. Sabina Church, located just steps away from the shooting scene, held a vigil in Gabryel's honor. Chicago police officers held a roll call at the intersection where she died as a sign of solidarity with the community. Mayor Brandon Johnson and Illinois State Senator Willie Preston also attended, calling the attack unacceptable and promising continued efforts to bring those responsible to justice. As of the latest reports, no arrests have been made. Detectives continue to investigate, but police have stated that it is not yet clear what led up to the shooting or why Gabryel's vehicle was targeted. Video shared online shows at least 3 attackers running toward the car and firing dozens of rounds before escaping in a red vehicle. 2 separate rewards are now being offered for information leading to an arrest. $10,000 from St. Sabina Parish, $10,000 from Cook County Crime. Stoppers authorities continue to urge anyone with information to come forward. Why this car? Why this moment? Why so many shots? These are the questions Gabryel's family still lives with. Police have not publicly linked the attack to gang activity, on personal disputes, or mistaken identity. Without answers, the case remains deeply unsettling for the community. What makes this crime especially disturbing is not just the violence, but the complete disregard for human life, including the life of a baby. In the weeks surrounding Gabryel's death, Chicago recorded dozens of fatal shootings. City leaders have acknowledged that gun violence continues to tear families apart and damage entire neighborhoods. But numbers alone cannot explain the loss felt by one child, one family, and one community. Gabryel Ayres was not a statistic. She was a person. She was a mother. While no single solution can stop every act of violence, Gabryel's case highlights several urgent needs. Accountability for illegal weapons. The sheer number of shots fired shows how easily powerful firearms are accessed and used in public spaces. Community trust and cooperation. Cases are solved faster when witnesses feel safe coming forward without fear. Rapid response and visible presence. Community members repeatedly call for better protection during daytime hours, not only overnight. Support for victims' families. Children left behind need long-term care, stability, and resources after sudden loss. These are not abstract ideas. They are real needs raised by people who live in these neighborhoods every day. Gabryel Ayres should be alive today, raising her daughter, planning her future, and building a life. Instead, her child will grow up with stories, photos, and memories shared by others. If you have thoughts about this case, or if violence has affected your community, share your perspective in the comments. Conversations like this matter, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Every story we tell is about remembering lives that deserve justice and making sure they are never forgotten. As days passed, frustration grew. Detectives canvassed the area, knocking on doors, reviewing nearby cameras, and replaying the footage that had already spread across social media. The images were clear enough to show movement and clothing, but not clear enough to immediately identify faces. The attackers had arrived with speed and left with purpose. That detail alone suggested planning rather than chance. Residents near the intersection spoke quietly, many unwilling to go on record. Some admitted fear. Others said they had heard the gunfire but froze, unsure of what they were hearing until it was over. In less time than it takes to make a phone call, a life has been taken. Investigators confirmed that the vehicle was struck again as the attackers fled. That detail raised deeper concerns. The violence did not stop once the car was disabled. It continued even as the threat was already neutralized. That choice would later become central to public outrage. The surviving passenger became a key witness. He had been shot twice and was taken to a separate hospital. Authorities have not released his statement publicly, but his survival offered investigators a possible path forward. What he saw, what he heard, and what he knew before that afternoon could hold critical value. However, police also made it clear that cooperation does not always come easily in cases like this. Fear of retaliation often keeps important details locked away. That silence can delay justice. While investigators worked, a family was forced to face a different reality. Gabryel's daughter would grow up without her mother's voice, her guidance, or her presence. The child would never remember the moment that changed everything, yet it would shape her entire future. Family members stepped in immediately. Care arrangements were made, love surrounded the baby, but grief sat heavy in the room. No amount of support could replace what was lost. 2 days after the shooting, people gathered near the same stretch of road where the attack happened. Candles lined the sidewalk. Photos were held close. Tears flowed freely. Faith leaders spoke not just of loss, but of responsibility. They urged anyone who knew something, anything, to speak up. They reminded the crowd that silence protects violence, not families. Police commanders stood nearby, acknowledging the anger and pain. Elected officials addressed the crowd with promises, though many listening had heard similar words before. Still, the gathering mattered. It sent a message that Gabryel would not be forgotten. As public pressure grew, financial incentives were announced. 2 separate rewards totaling $20,000 were offered for information leading to arrests. Flyers circulated. Phone numbers were shared repeatedly. Community leaders made direct appeals, asking people to think about the child who survived and the mother who did not. They asked a simple question. What would you want if this were your family? This shooting cut deeper than many others because of where and when it happened. It took place during daylight hours, on a public street, with witnesses nearby, with a baby inside the vehicle. The scale of the attack shocked even those accustomed to hearing about gun violence. More than 50 shots fired was not just excessive, it was deliberate. For many residents, it confirmed a growing fear that nowhere felt truly safe anymore. Despite public attention, several key facts remain unclear. Authorities have not confirmed whether Gabryel or the other passenger was the intended target. No motive has been shared. No suspect identities have been released. That uncertainty has allowed rumors to spread. Is something family members have repeatedly pushed back against. They have asked the public to focus on verified information, not speculation. They want justice, not stories. Those closest to Gabryel want her known for more than how she died. They remember her laughter, her protectiveness, her constant focus on her child. They remember a young woman trying to navigate adulthood while carrying the weight of responsibility many never fully understand until it arrives. That is how they want her legacy framed. At this stage, the investigation remains open. Detectives continue reviewing footage, following leads, and urging cooperation. Police have stated that every credible tip is being examined. The red vehicle seen leaving the scene remains a critical focus. Someone knows who was inside it. Gabryel Ayres did not choose to become part of a headline. She did not choose violence. She did not choose to leave her child behind. Her story is a reminder of how quickly lives can be changed and ended by decisions made in seconds. If you have thoughts about this case, or if similar violence has touched your area, share your voice below. These conversations matter, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told with care and truth, make sure you're subscribed. Justice often begins with awareness. Is this conversation helpful so far? Weeks passed, then months. For Gabryel's family, time did not heal. It stretched. Every day without answers felt heavier than the last. Phone calls from investigators became less frequent, not because the case no longer mattered, but because progress was slow. That silence was difficult to endure. Each time a siren echoed through the neighborhood, her mother felt it. Each time her daughter laughed or cried, the absence was impossible to ignore. Life moved forward, but not evenly. Inside police headquarters, the case remained active. Detectives revisited footage frame by frame. They studied how the attackers approached, how they moved, how quickly they returned to their vehicle. Their coordination suggested familiarity with one another and comfort with violence. The decision to stop and fire again while leaving raised alarms. That action showed intent, not panic. It also suggested the attackers wanted certainty. Yet without arrests, certainty remained out of reach for everyone else. In Auburn Gresham, residents adjusted their routines. Parents changed school drop-off times. Local shop owners closed earlier. Some avoided the intersection entirely. People spoke less freely on the street. Conversations dropped when unfamiliar faces appeared. Trust eroded quietly. What happened to Gabryel did not stay at that corner. It followed people home. Gabryel's daughter continued to grow. First words, first steps, first birthdays. Milestones arrived without the one person who should have been there for them all. Family members captured photos and videos, saving them for a future conversation no one looked forward to having. One day, the child would ask questions. Why wasn't her mother there? What happened? Who was responsible? Those answers were not ready yet. Faith leaders did not let the story fade. They spoke at services, on local broadcasts, and at neighborhood meetings. They reminded the city that justice delayed becomes justice denied. They urged anyone holding information to consider the weight of silence, not as a threat, but as a moral burden. One voice, one detail, one moment of courage could change everything. Among all the unanswered elements, one detail remained constant. The red vehicle. Witnesses saw it arrive. Cameras captured it leaving. Investigators believed it carried the people responsible for Gabryel's death. Someone had seen it before. Someone knew where it came from. Someone recognized it. That belief kept the case alive. Despite grief, Gabryel's family refused to retreat. They attended every vigil. They spoke when asked. They corrected misinformation when it surfaced. They made sure her name stayed public. Not out of anger alone, but out of duty. They wanted the world to know that Gabryel was more than a victim. She was a person whose life mattered. For the family, justice would not erase the loss. It would not bring Gabryel back. It would not restore the life her daughter should have known. But it would mean accountability. It would mean that what happened did not simply disappear into another unsolved case. Some stories end with arrests, some end with courtrooms, some end with answers. This one is still waiting. If you know anything about what happened on that afternoon in Chicago, your information could change a child's future and give a family peace they have been denied. And for everyone watching, Remember Gabryel Ayres, not only for how her life ended, but for the love she left behind. Because forgetting is the final injustice. And so the city held its breath. Every siren, every shout, every sudden silence reminded people that violence could strike without warning. Gabryel's name was whispered on street corners, in churches, in quiet homes where mothers hugged their children a little tighter. Her daughter, too young to understand fully, would grow surrounded by stories of her mother's courage, her warmth, her laughter. Each photo, each memory shared by family and friends was a thread keeping Gabryel alive in the hearts of those who loved her. The red car, the black clothing, the weapons, these details haunted the investigation. Detectives retraced every angle of the video, examined every shell casing, every mark on the pavement. They questioned neighbors, witnesses, anyone who might know even a small piece of information. Every clue mattered. Every second counted. Meanwhile, the community refused to turn away. Vigils continued. Candles flickered in the evening wind. Families held hands, and pastors spoke of hope, even as grief clung to every face. They spoke not only for Gabryel, but for every life threatened, every mother, every child, every family, trying to survive in a city that had been scarred by gunfire for too long. Her godfather, Pastor Kirk Bell, became a relentless voice demanding justice. His grief fueled speeches, interviews, and appeals to leaders, asking the city to take meaningful action. "They need to clean this city up," he repeated again and again, the words heavy with pain, frustration, and determination. He refused to let the memory of his goddaughter fade quietly into the news cycle. As the weeks turned into months, pressure mounted on law enforcement. Social media campaigns reminded the public a mother had been killed in front of her baby, a crime committed in daylight, in broad view, and no one had yet been held accountable. Citizens posted videos, shared news clips, and pleaded for tips. Every post carried the weight of both grief and urgency. At the hospital where Gabryel had been rushed, staff remembered her bravery and resilience. They recalled the frantic moments of saving her life, the determination of her family, and the heartbreak of ultimately losing her. For them, she was more than a statistic. She was a mother, a patient, a person whose life deserved more time. And her baby girl, innocent, untouched by the violence that tore her family apart, continued to grow, watched over by family members who promised to carry her mother's love forward. Every bedtime story, every lullaby, every embrace was a quiet testament to Gabryel's memory. In the streets of Auburn Gresham, residents began to organize. Community meetings, neighborhood watches, and youth outreach programs sprang up in response to the shooting. While nothing could undo the tragedy, people committed to taking action to prevent it from happening again. They taught children about safety, alerted neighbors about suspicious activity, and held workshops on conflict resolution. Yet, even amid these efforts, fear lingered. Parents still feared for their children. Families still wondered who might be next. And the unanswered questions about that day, the red car, the attackers, the motive, remained like shadows over the neighborhood. But there was also resilience. There was remembrance. There was love. And in that love, Gabryel's story continued to inspire courage. Her family made sure the baby would always know her mother's strength, her care, her devotion. They spoke often of the mother she never met, and of the sacrifices Gabryel had made, even unknowingly, for the life she brought into the world. And somewhere in the hearts of all who had seen the footage, read the news, or attended the vigils, Gabryel's name became a symbol, a reminder that life can be fragile, that innocence can be targeted, and that communities must never turn away from tragedy. Because forgetting is the final injustice, and remembering, honoring, and seeking justice is the only way to keep her spirit alive. Months turned into a year, but the memory of that afternoon remained fresh in every corner of the neighborhood. Gabrielle's name was spoken in churches, schools, and homes, a quiet reminder that life could be stolen in an instant. Candles still flickered at the intersection where her car had crashed. Flowers wilted, were replaced and wilted again, but the act of leaving them behind became a ritual, a way for the community to say, "We have not forgotten you." Her daughter grew, surrounded by the love of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and friends who promised to tell her mother's story. Every laugh, every first step, every word spoken was a living echo of Gabryel. Family photos, toys, and small mementos kept her presence tangible, a constant reminder that her life mattered and that her love had not vanished. Meanwhile, police continued their investigation. Tips came and went, some promising, others leading nowhere. The red car remained a symbol of the violence that had taken Gabryel. Witnesses were urged again and again to come forward. Flyers hung on lampposts in stores and in community centers, offering the rewards for information. Every phone call, every tip, every witness statement was a chance, perhaps the only chance, to finally hold the perpetrators accountable. Community leaders did not give up. Vigils continued on anniversaries, and each year the intersection became a place of remembrance. Children who had been toddlers when Gabryel died now held candles, whispered prayers, and learned about her courage. Faith leaders reminded everyone that while the attackers had taken her life, they could not take her legacy, her love, or her memory. Pastor Kirk Bell, still grieving, still fighting, spoke often at these gatherings. His voice carried anger, sorrow, and hope all at once. He reminded people of Gabryel's devotion as a mother, the life she had been building, and the baby who survived because of her love. "They cannot erase her," he would say. "Her spirit lives in that child, in her family, and in all of us who remember." The Auburn Gresham streets slowly healed, but the mark of that day remained. Parents adjusted their routines, children were watched closely, and neighbors stayed alert. Yet, amidst the fear, there was resilience. People are organized. They helped one another. They refused to let violence define their lives entirely. Gabryel's story spread beyond Chicago. Videos, news reports, and online memorials shared her name, her tragedy, and her courage with the world. People in distant cities learned of the mother whose life had been stolen and the child who survived against all odds. Her story became a call to action, a symbol of the need for awareness, safety, and justice. And still, in every heartbeat, in every memory, in every whispered name, Gabryel remained alive. Her life, though brief, had left an indelible mark. Her death reminded the world of the fragility of life, the importance of community, and the enduring power of love. Because forgetting is not an option, her story demands to be told, to be remembered, and to inspire change, so that no mother, no child, and no family will ever face the same senseless loss without hope. The neighborhood continued to carry the weight of that day. Streetlights illuminated corners where conversations had grown quieter, and cars slowed as people passed the spot where Gabryel's sedan had crashed. Her story was not just in newspapers or news broadcasts. It was in the air, in the caution of every parent, in the care of every guardian walking children home. Each year, vigils became a testament to persistence. Candles glimmered, prayers were said aloud, and her name was spoken repeatedly, not as a symbol of defeat, but as proof that love and memory outlast violence. Her baby girl, now beginning to recognize faces and sounds, was shielded by family from the harsh realities that had taken her mother. Yet every action surrounding her, the lullabies, the photos, the whispered stories, ensured Gabryel's presence remained real, tangible, and guiding. Meanwhile, authorities continued piecing together fragments of evidence. Investigators returned repeatedly to the surveillance, to the shell casings, and to the eyewitness accounts. They retraced the path of the red getaway vehicle countless times. New community members provided small pieces of information, sometimes overlooked at first, that could become critical leads. Every tip mattered. Every recollection could bring closure. Despite the fear and grief, life pressed forward. Children played in parks near the streets where the shooting had occurred, families celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, and local shops reopened their doors. Yet, the memory of Gabryel lingered. She had become woven into the fabric of the community, a reminder of both loss and resilience. Pastor Kirk Bell and other faith leaders continued to speak, their voices a mix of sorrow and resolve. They reminded people of the stakes, of the importance of vigilance, of the need to protect young lives, and of the responsibility to stand against senseless violence. In every sermon, every speech, every public statement, they carried Gabryel's story forward, ensuring that her life would not be reduced to a single tragic moment. For Gabryel's family, the pain remained sharp, yet they found strength in action. They visited the intersection where she had been shot, leaving flowers and letters, talking to her child about the mother she had never met, and holding community gatherings to honor her life. The baby grew surrounded by love, protected by those who refused to let fear dictate their lives, and reminded daily of the mother who had given everything to keep her safe. The red car remained the haunting symbol of that day. Even as months passed, no arrests had been made, but the vehicle's path, captured in videos and eyewitness memories, continued to drive the investigation. Law enforcement emphasized that every tip, every eyewitness account, could be the key to finally bringing those responsible to justice. And so Gabryel's story continued, not in headlines but in moments of reflection, in acts of care, in prayers and vigils, and in the everyday lives of the people who loved her. Her death was tragic, but her life, her love, and her courage persisted, influencing every step her child took, every choice her family made, and every voice in the community willing to speak out against violence. Because forgetting is impossible, her memory lives on in the hearts of those who mourn her, in the baby she protected, and in a city still struggling to ensure that no one else suffers the same fate.